G'day folks, welcome to another 4Oaks Adventures adventure. On this trip I'm heading to Lake Mungo. Behind me is a flock of sheep. Now, what does a sheep have to do with the discovery of the oldest human remains found outside of Africa? Stick around and find out. I love Australia. When you think you know a place really well, and then one day you wake up to this. This is the start of winter in Australia, and it is bitterly cold, at least for us. It's 3 degrees. It's 8 o'clock. I'm next to the Murrumbidgee River, just outside of Eyre in outback New South Wales. I've got about 100 kilometres to go to the town of Balranald, where I shall fill up with fuel, and then it's about 150 kilometres from there to Mungo National Park. Lake Mungo is located 1,000 kilometres due west from Sydney. Many significant historical and archaeological discoveries were made at Lake Mungo, including the discovery of the oldest human remains found outside of Africa. Ever since I've heard about this, I've wanted to go there. Right, we've just made it to the town of Balranald. Balranald is about 120 kilometres from Eyre, and it's about 830 kilometres from Sydney. We're going to now fuel up and then head to Mungo National Park. Mungo National Park is about 150 kilometres from Balranald. The first 50 is on sealed road, and the remaining 100 kilometres is on dirt track. Now, according to Google Maps, Apple Maps, TomTom, HEMA, etc., all these electronic navigators, they are saying that that last 100 kilometre section will take me 4.5 hours. Well, they are absolutely wrong. Don't pay attention to them. It will take you an hour and a half. That's it, no more than an hour and a half. So we're just now going to fuel up and head off. Mungo is 150 kilometres away, and you need to budget about 400 to 500 kilometres of fuel for the trip to Mungo and back and around the park. I soon hit the open road. The fog had lifted and it turned into a beautiful day. Blue skies, sun shining, not another vehicle around. I was content. There's nothing like the feeling of leaving civilization behind and heading out into the bush. So precisely 50 kilometres from Balranald is the turn-off to Mungo National Park. Mungo National Park is 100 kilometres down this road. This will shortly become dirt track, and about 95 kilometres of it will be corrugated dirt track. The condition of the track is generally pretty good. It pays to check online first and make sure that the track is indeed open. Now I'm just going for a bit of a walk in the bush here, and as you can see around me, the landscape is very flat and arid. Just a little bit of scrub around, and the only thing that will grow is this thing here. This is saltbush, and the only thing that eats this is kangaroos and goats. Even the camels won't eat it. The more remote we get, the more the road deteriorates. Here you have the road has now become a single lane that's shared by traffic in both directions. So what happens is, when someone is coming towards you, you move your car half off the road and they move their car half off the road, and then you pass each other, move back onto the road. If a road train is coming towards you, you completely get off the road and stop and let that thing pass, because it has right of way. It's a huge thing. I finally made it to the dirt track. This is where the fun begins. I have about 100 kilometres of corrugations to go. And no sooner did I say the word corrugations, but the corrugations hit with a vengeance. Actually, the one good thing about corrugations is I've just been doing highway driving for the past 18 hours over the past 2 days, and all that sitting down in one spot has made my back feel a little bit stiff. But as soon as you get onto the corrugations, it's like having a nice massage. It just feels good. So I just stopped on the track about halfway to Lake Mungo. I've got another 50 kilometres to go. And as you can see, the track is quite wet. There's been a fair bit of rain and the ground is fairly slippery in places. So regardless of whether you have a four-wheel drive or a two-wheel drive vehicle, it's a good idea to check the Mungo website and find out the condition of the tracks before you head off. I've been checking every day prior to my trip, and the tracks are open, although it's a little bit wet, a little bit slippery. I'm thankful for having a four-wheel drive. Another 50 kilometres of this type of track to go, and then we are in Mungo National Park. So this is the boundary of Mungo National Park. I'm currently in Lake Chibnallwood, and behind me you can see the road rise up out of the lake. It goes over the rim, and that's the perimeter of this particular lake. So we're going to now head into the park, and in about 20 kilometres we will reach the visitor centre. Just caught my first sight of Lake Mungo. Up ahead is some white sand dunes, and there's some white sand in that direction, and there's some dunes in that direction, and that is basically the perimeter of Lake Mungo. Lake Mungo is about 37 kilometres long, and the entire eastern edge of the lake is sand dunes basically. So we're about 8 kilometres from the visitor centre. We're going to go into the visitor centre and then have a look at Lake Mungo. So there's an information bay which tells you a little bit about the park. Okay, so this is Mungo National Park. We've come from Balranald and we're heading up to the Mungo Lookout, and then we're going to turn right and we're going to visit the visitor centre. From the visitor centre we're going to head right across the middle of Lake Mungo. This is Lake Mungo. So we're going to head right across the middle of Lake Mungo and have a look at a lookout over here. This perimeter, that's sand dunes the entire way, and it's quite spectacular. So we're going to have a look at that. And then once we get to here, it's one way from this point onwards. Sorry, from this point onwards, it's one way only. So that perimeter all the way around and back to the visitor centre, it's a one-way track. So once you've passed this point, you can't go back. So we're going to go all the way along here and stay at Bella Camp. We'll have a look at a few other places to see along this track here. There's some sand dunes up here which are absolutely spectacular. And then make our way back and probably do a second circuit as well. So that's basically the extent of what we're going to do today. And there's another map here showing you some more detail. So I'm going to be camping tonight because it's more fun, that's why. This is the Lake Mungo Lookout. It is just before the visitor centre, and it is the first proper look we can get at Lake Mungo. So that white sand that you can see on the horizon, that is the eastern shore of Lake Mungo, and those sand dunes run the full length of the lake, some 34 kilometres. It's a bit windy here today, but I will tell you more about those sand dunes when we get over there. It's a very, very interesting story of how they actually formed. One cool thing about Lake Mungo is you can actually hire mountain bikes and ride around the entire park. You can ride on the four-wheel drive tracks, and in some cases there are dedicated mountain bike tracks. I haven't done that myself, but it sounds like a really good thing to do. So the park is pretty safe. I say pretty safe, but not really. The only large animals are goats and kangaroos, and they're fairly tame. But the things that will kill you are snakes, and there are a lot of snakes. So you need to be very, very careful about snakes. Okay, just up to my left is Mungo Lodge. Mungo Lodge is an upmarket accommodation. They have a bar and a restaurant and a pool and hot showers and cabins. I wish I was staying there tonight, but my plan is to stay in one of the bush camps. Now, Mungo has two bush camps. One is called Main Camp, and that is located just up here next to Mungo Lodge, and it is basically a bush camp with long drop toilets. The other camp is called Bella Camp, and it's located right on the other side of the park. You can only get to it via a one-way track, and that's where I'm headed. That's where I would like to stay tonight. My reasoning is the fewer people the better. So if I can stay at Bella Camp and with any luck no one else is there, that would be perfect. But we shall see. So we're now heading down towards the visitor centre and Lake Mungo itself. In fact, the lake is stretching out before us. It is absolutely beautiful. Okay, so you have to pay admission fees to get into the park. So the fees are... Okay, so for every adult, it's $8.50 per person per night, and $8 per vehicle per day. So for me, one person, one vehicle, it's $16.50. And you pay by filling in one of these envelopes. It has a bunch of questions on there. Fill out one of these, leave your money in there and pop it in the slot. The visitor centre is frequently unmanned, however it does contain a lot of very useful information about the park. This, for example, was an ancient oversized wombat. It was dated to about 100,000 years ago. The information cabinets contain samples of items that were found in the park. For example, stone tools and various carvings. One of the discoveries made at Lake Mungo is some footprints fossilised in the sand near the edge of the lake. Now this was clearly a family or a group of people, adults, children, running around in the soft mud on the edge of the lake. The lake then dried out, and over time these footprints fossilised, and they have been cast and preserved for eternity. Now these have been dated to be approximately 20,000 years old. And the interesting thing is that the Aboriginal elders, they can actually interpret these footsteps and they know what was going on. The Aboriginal people have various dances that they hand down from generation to generation, and these dances, they mimic the motions of animals, etc. And by looking at where the footsteps are placed, they can work out exactly what it means, what dance that they were performing 20,000 years ago. It's quite amazing. So the building you see behind me is the Zanzi woolshed. This dates to 1870 and it's right alongside the shore of Lake Mungo. Now you might think, well, what does a woolshed have to do with the history of Lake Mungo? Well, it will all become evident pretty soon. The Zanzi family came to the Mungo area as pastoralists. And this is the shearing shed. It is very, very basic and primitive, but we are talking about the 1800s. The sheep would have been corralled in these pens here. This is where they used to shear the sheep. And once the sheep has been shorn, the sheep gets let out there. This is a very, very old machine. And this ran on steam. So they would load in firewood through those doors and fill it up with water, and this would then generate steam, turn that large wheel, and then via a belt it would turn all these wheels, and you would then engage or disengage the mechanism to start shearing the sheep. So, apart from the building actually existing here, what does this actually have to do with the history of Lake Mungo? Well, as you will see later on, quite a lot in fact. It was quite pivotal to the way that the lake turned out. It was quite pivotal to what was discovered here. And this building essentially changed the landscape forever. Join me next time as I continue exploring Mungo National Park. I get to meet some of the locals. Talk about a melon and point at a spanner. Saw an emu run through. I almost ran over this guy.